positive ID on the registered owner.
Welcome to Mafia and Romance, where love, regret, and fate intertwine in the most heartbreaking ways. Before we begin, I want you to think about something. How many calls have you ignored today? How many times did you see someone's name on your screen and think, I'll call them back later? Because sometimes later never comes. And the calls we miss become the ones that haunt us forever. If this story stirs something in your heart, share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me about a call you wish you'd answered. The hotel room in Berlin was immaculate. Crisp white sheets, minimalist furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's glittering skyline. Nikolai Kuznetsov sat at the desk, his laptop open, 3 monitors displaying live feeds of shipping manifests, encrypted communications, and financial transfers moving through offshore accounts. His empire didn't sleep, even when he crossed time zones. Especially then. His phone vibrated against the polished wood surface. Irina's name appeared on the screen, accompanied by the photo he'd taken of her last month at their dacha outside Moscow. She was laughing, her blonde hair catching the late afternoon sun, her green eyes bright with joy, the kind of unguarded happiness she only showed when they were alone, away from the weight of his world. Nikolai glanced at the call, his hand hovering over the phone. He was in the middle of coordinating a crucial shipment through Hamburg. 20 containers of legitimate construction equipment concealing something far more valuable beneath false floors and hidden compartments. Timing was everything. One delay, one customs inspection gone wrong, and months of planning would collapse. He'd call her back in 20 minutes. Maybe 30. She'd understand. She always did. The phone stopped vibrating. The screen went dark. He returned his attention to the monitors, typing rapid instructions to his contact at the Hamburg port. The shipment needed to clear customs within the next 4 hours, during the shift change when his paid inspectors would be on duty. After that, the window closed and the risk multiplied exponentially. His phone buzzed again. A text message from Irina. Irina, I need to talk to you. It's important. Nikolai frowned. Irina wasn't needy. She wasn't the type to demand his attention or guilt him into responding. In 3 years together, she'd learned the rhythm of his life. The disappearances, the encrypted calls, the business that couldn't wait. She'd accepted it all with a grace that still surprised him. Which meant if she said it was important, it probably was. He started typing a response. I'm handling Hamburg. Give me an hour. I promise I'll call. But before he could send it, his business phone rang, the encrypted line reserved for emergencies. Victor's name flashed on the screen. His second in command, the man who'd been with him since they were teenagers running protection rackets in St. Petersburg's brutal streets. Nikolai answered immediately. Talk. We have a problem. Victor's voice was tight, controlled. The tone of a man delivering news that could start a war. The Germans are moving on the warehouse. Someone talked. Nikolai's blood turned to ice. How much time do we have? 2 hours. Maybe 3. We need to move the inventory now, or we lose everything. Everything. 3 million euros worth of product. 6 months of work. Relationships with suppliers who didn't tolerate failure. I'll be there in 40 minutes, Nikolai said, already standing, already calculating routes and backup plans and which alliances he could leverage. We're mobilizing the trucks now. Nikolai, this is going to get messy. I know. Do what needs to be done. I'm on my way. He ended the call and moved with mechanical efficiency, grabbing his jacket, his go bag with multiple passports and cash, his secondary phone. The unsent message to Irina still glowed on his personal phone screen. I'm handling Hamburg. Give me an hour. Promise I'll call. He deleted it. No time for promises he might not be able to keep. He'd explain later when this crisis was contained, when he could breathe again. She'd understand. She always did. Nikolai left the hotel room, striding through the elegant hallway toward the elevator. His mind was already 3 steps ahead. Contingency plans, escape routes which competitors might have betrayed him, how to minimize the damage, who would need to be held accountable. His personal phone vibrated in his pocket. He didn't check it. The elevator descended smoothly to the lobby. Outside, his driver waited with the Mercedes S-Class, engine running, ready to move. Nikolai slid into the back seat, and the car pulled into Berlin traffic, weaving aggressively toward the industrial district where his warehouse was about to become a battlefield. Faster, Nikolai commanded. Yes, sir. The city blurred past. Tourists snapping photos at the Brandenburg Gate, couples walking hand in hand along the Spree, ordinary people living ordinary lives, completely unaware of the wars being fought in the shadows around them. Nikolai's personal phone vibrated again, and again. Irina was calling. He pulled it from his pocket, staring at her photo on the screen. That bright smile. Those eyes that had seen through his darkness and chosen to stay anyway. He almost answered. His finger hovered over the green button. But then Victor called on the encrypted line again, and the choice was made. The trucks are loaded, Victor reported, breathless now, the sound of shouting in the background. But the Germans are closer than we thought. We're going to have to split the convoy. Nikolai, if they catch even one truck. They won't, Nikolai interrupted, his voice cold steel. Divide the routes. Use the secondary safe houses. And Victor, anyone who gets caught doesn't know anything. Make sure they understand what happens if they talk. Understood. The call ended. Nikolai looked back at his personal phone. 3 missed calls from Irina now. 2 text messages. Irina, Kolya, please pick up. Irina, I'm scared. Something's wrong. I need to hear your voice. Guilt stabbed through him, sharp and unexpected. She was scared. She needed him, and he was racing toward a warehouse crisis instead of calling the woman he loved. But this was his life. This was the choice he'd made when he'd built an empire on violence and secrets. Protection meant prioritizing threats. And right now, the threat was in Hamburg, not in Moscow where Irina was safe in their apartment. He'd call her as soon as the shipment was secure. 1 hour. 2 at most. He typed a quick message. Emergency in Hamburg. I'm okay. I'll call you soon. Don't worry. But as his thumb moved to hit send, the car screeched to a halt. What? Nikolai started. Police checkpoint, the driver said, his voice tense. Ahead. They're stopping everyone. Nikolai looked up. Blue lights flashed 200 meters ahead. Police vehicles blocking the road. Officers directing traffic into a bottleneck inspection point. Turn around, Nikolai ordered. Use the alternate route. The driver executed a quick U-turn, tires squealing, and accelerated down a side street. Nikolai's jaw clenched. Delays. Every second mattered now. His business phone rang continuously, Victor with updates, his lawyer with contingencies, his logistics coordinator with alternate routes. Nikolai handled each call with brutal efficiency, making decisions that would cost or save millions, that would determine whether his empire survived the night. Through it all, his personal phone sat beside him. Irina's unanswered messages glowing accusingly. Irina, I'm scared. Something's wrong. I need to hear your voice. He'd call her. Soon. As soon as Hamburg was handled. He always did. The warehouse was chaos barely contained. Trucks idled in the loading bay, their engines rumbling like caged beasts. Men in dark clothing moved with urgent precision, loading crates, checking routes, speaking in terse code. Victor stood in the center, orchestrating the evacuation like a conductor leading a violent symphony. Nikolai arrived and immediately took command. Status. 3 trucks loaded and moving, Victor reported. 2 more need another 10 minutes. The Germans are mobilizing faster than expected. Our contact says they'll hit this location within the hour. Then we have 45 minutes, Nikolai said. Move faster. Leave anything that isn't critical. Orders flowed from him like water, each decision precise, calculated to minimize exposure and maximize survival. This was what he was good at, crisis management, tactical thinking, controlling chaos through sheer force of will. His personal phone rang in his pocket. Irina, again. He silenced it without looking. Victor noticed, his expression flickering with something that might have been concern. Irina, I'll call her back, Nikolai said curtly. Focus on the trucks. Boss, maybe you should. Focus on the trucks, Nikolai repeated, his voice hardening into command. Victor nodded and returned to coordinating the evacuation. 40 minutes later, the last truck pulled out of the warehouse, disappearing into Berlin's industrial maze. Nikolai stood in the empty building, surrounded by abandoned equipment they deemed not worth the risk of transporting. In 3 hours, German police would raid this location and find nothing but scraps. Evidence that someone had been here, but no proof of what they'd been doing. Clean, Nikolai said into his encrypted phone. Move to the secondary positions. No contact for 72 hours unless there's an emergency. Understood, Victor replied. You should get out of Germany. They'll be looking for anyone associated with this location. I'm already gone. Nikolai left the warehouse and slid back into the Mercedes. Airport. Private terminal. Yes, sir. As the car navigated toward the outskirts of Berlin, Nikolai finally allowed himself to exhale. Crisis contained. Shipment divided and moving through underground routes. Loss minimal. The Empire survived another day. He pulled out his personal phone. 7 missed calls from Irina. For text messages. Irina. Kolya, please pick up. Irina. I'm scared. Something's wrong. I need to hear your voice. Irina. Why aren't you answering? Please. I need you. Irina. I'm going to drive to Vera's. Maybe being with someone will help. I love you. Please call me. Nikolai's stomach tightened. The timestamps showed the messages spanning the last 3 hours. While he'd been managing the Hamburg crisis, Irina had been trying to reach him, increasingly desperate, increasingly frightened. He immediately called her number. It rang, and rang, and rang. No answer. Voicemail. Irina, it's me. I'm sorry I didn't answer earlier. There was an emergency, but it's handled now. Call me back as soon as you get this. I love you. He tried again. Same result. Strange. Irina always answered his calls, even when she was angry with him. Especially when she was angry with him. She'd answer just to tell him exactly how frustrated she was. Nikolai checked the last message again. She'd said she was driving to Vera's, her best friend's apartment on the other side of Moscow, about 40 minutes from their place. He called Vera's number. She answered on the second ring. Nikolai? Is everything okay? Is Irina with you? He asked. With me? No. Why would she be with me? Nikolai's chest tightened. She sent me a message saying she was driving to your place. 3 hours ago. Silence. Then carefully, Nikolai, I haven't heard from Irina since yesterday. We were supposed to have lunch next week, but she definitely didn't call me today. She said she was scared, Nikolai said, hearing the edge in his own voice. She said something was wrong, and she was going to drive to your place to be with someone. I don't understand. Scared of what? I don't know. She didn't say. Have you tried calling her? She's not answering. Another pause, heavier now, waited with concern. Nikolai, that's not like her. Irina always answers her phone. I know. Maybe her battery died? Or she decided to go somewhere else. Maybe, Nikolai said, but he didn't believe it. Irina was meticulous about charging her phone, especially when she was going somewhere. And she wouldn't say she was going to Vera's if she meant somewhere else. Call me if you hear from her, Nikolai said. Immediately. I will. Nikolai, I'm sure she's fine. Probably just a miscommunication. Probably, he agreed and ended the call. But the tightness in his chest didn't ease. He tried Irina's number again. Still no answer. The car approached the private terminal at Berlin's airport, where his jet waited to take him back to Moscow. Nikolai stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past, a growing unease spreading through him like poison. Irina had been scared. She'd called him 7 times. She'd needed to hear his voice, and he'd sent her to voicemail because Hamburg mattered more. No, not more. Hamburg had been urgent, critical, life or death for his organization. But Irina had sounded life or death too, and he'd chosen the organization. His phone rang. Unknown number. Moscow area code. Nikolai answered immediately. Yes. Is this Nikolai Kuznetsov? The voice was male, official, careful. Who is this? This is Captain Dmitry Volkov with the Moscow Regional Police. Sir, we need to speak with you regarding Irina Sokolova. Are you her emergency contact? Everything inside Nikolai went cold. What happened? Sir, we found Ms. Sokolova's vehicle approximately 90 kilometers west of Moscow, near the Minsk highway. The car was abandoned on the side of the road. There are signs of a struggle. We haven't located Ms. Sokolova yet. But, what do you mean, you haven't located her? Nikolai's voice cut like a blade. The car was empty. We found her phone inside, along with her purse and identification. But there's no sign of Ms. Sokolova herself. Sir, when was the last time you spoke with her? Nikolai's mind was racing, fragmenting, trying to process words that didn't make sense. Abandoned car. Signs of struggle. Phone found inside. No sign of Irina. Sir, Captain Volkov prompted. When did you last speak with Ms. Sokolova? This morning, Nikolai said, his voice hollow. Moscow time. Around 9 a.m. And she didn't mention any plans? Anywhere she was going? Anyone she was meeting? She said she was driving to her friend's apartment. But the friend says Irina never arrived. Which friend? Vera Markova. I just spoke with her. We'll need to speak with Ms. Markova as well. Sir, I need you to understand the severity of this situation. We have a missing person, an abandoned vehicle with signs of forced entry, and a timeline that suggests Ms. Sokolova has been missing for approximately 3 hours. 3 hours. The same 3 hours Nikolai had spent managing the Hamburg crisis. The same 3 hours Irina had been calling him, texting him, telling him she was scared. I'm in Berlin, Nikolai said, his voice mechanical. I'll be back in Moscow within 2 hours. Sir, we need to ask you some questions about 2 hours, Nikolai interrupted. I'll come to your station myself. Just find her. Do whatever you need to do. Find her. He ended the call before Captain Volkov could respond. The car pulled into the private terminal. Nikolai sat motionless, his phone still clutched in his hand, staring at Irina's unanswered messages. Irina, I'm scared. Something's wrong. I need to hear your voice. She'd been scared. She'd called him 7 times, and he'd sent her to voicemail. Now she was missing. Her car abandoned 90 kilometers outside Moscow. Signs of a struggle. Phone left behind. No trace of where she'd gone, or who had taken her. Nikolai's hands started shaking. A tremor he couldn't control, couldn't suppress, couldn't hide behind the mask of control he'd worn his entire adult life. This wasn't possible. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. He protected what was his. He eliminated threats before they materialized. He controlled outcomes. But he hadn't answered her call. And now she was gone. If this story is gripping you, if you feel the weight of every unanswered call, pause for just a second and hit the like button. Not for the algorithm, for everyone who's ever realized too late that they should have picked up. Your like means something here. The flight back to Moscow was the longest 2 hours of Nikolai's life. He sat alone in the cabin of his private jet, his phone in his hand, staring at Irina's messages, reading them over and over until the words blurred together. I'm scared. Something's wrong. I need to hear your voice. What had she been scared of? What had she sensed? What had he missed? He replayed their last conversation in his mind, that morning before he'd left for Berlin. She'd made him breakfast in their apartment, strong coffee and blini with honey the way he liked. They'd eaten in comfortable silence, her hand resting on his arm, her thumb tracing absent circles on his skin. How long will you be gone? She'd asked. 3 days. For at most. Hamburg. Then a quick stop in Amsterdam. Business. Always business. She'd smiled, but it hadn't reached her eyes. Be safe, Kolya. I'm always safe, he'd replied, kissing her forehead. You're the one I worry about. Stay in the apartment. Don't go anywhere alone. Victor's men are watching the building. I know. You tell me every time you leave. Because it's important. I have enemies, Irina. People who would hurt you to hurt me. I know, she'd said again, softer this time. I'll be careful. I promise. But something had happened. Something that scared her enough to call him 7 times. Something that made her try to drive to Vera's apartment for safety. And somewhere on that drive, 90 kilometers from Moscow, something had gone terribly wrong. Nikolai pulled up his encrypted communications app and sent a message to Victor. Irina is missing. Car found abandoned on Minsk Highway. Signs of struggle. I need everything: traffic cameras, witnesses, police scanner monitoring, street intelligence. Deploy everyone. Find her. The response came within seconds. Bozhe moi. Already mobilizing. We'll have preliminary intel when you land. Nikolai leaned back in the leather seat, closing his eyes, trying to think like the strategist he'd trained himself to be. Who would target Irina? The list was long: rival organizations, enemies he'd made climbing to power, families of people he'd eliminated, competitors who wanted to weaken him. But which one would be bold enough to move against her directly? And why now, while he was out of the country? Unless that was the point. Unless someone had been watching, waiting for him to leave Moscow, knowing he'd be distracted by business in Berlin. The timing was too precise to be coincidence. Which meant this was planned. Calculated. An attack designed to hurt him in the way that mattered most. By taking the only person he loved. His phone rang. Captain Volkov. We've reviewed traffic camera footage, the police captain said without preamble. Ms. Sokolova's vehicle is visible leaving Moscow at approximately 14:47 local time, heading west on the Minsk Highway. The car is visible on several cameras until approximately 15:23, when it disappears from coverage in a rural section of the highway. What happened in that section? Nikolai demanded. We don't know yet. There are no cameras in that area. We're canvassing for witnesses, checking nearby businesses, looking for any vehicles that might have been following her. What about her phone? We have it in evidence. We're attempting to access it now, but it's password protected. Do you know the code? It's her birthday. 0-7-1-2. Thank you. We'll examine her call history, messages, any apps that might indicate where she was going or who she might have been meeting. She wasn't meeting anyone, Nikolai said, his voice hard. She was running from something. She told me she was scared. Scared of what specifically? She didn't say. I didn't ask. The words tasted like poison. I was handling business. I told her I'd call her back. Silence on the line, heavy with implications. Mr. Kuznetsov, Captain Volkov said carefully, I need to ask you some questions about your relationship with Ms. Sokolova. Were there any recent conflicts, arguments, reasons she might have wanted to leave? Nikolai's jaw clenched. You think she left voluntarily? I'm exploring all possibilities. She was taken, Nikolai said, each word deliberate. Someone targeted her. Look at the evidence. Abandoned car, signs of struggle, phone left behind. That's not someone leaving. That's someone being taken. Mr. Kuznetsov, I understand you're upset. But, upset? Nikolai's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Captain, you have no idea what I am. But you're about to find out. I will find whoever took her. And when I do, your investigation will become a recovery operation. Are we clear? Another pause. Then, very quietly, Mr. Kuznetsov, I'm aware of your reputation. But threatening. I'm not threatening anyone, Nikolai interrupted. I'm explaining reality. Irina is the only innocent person in my life. The only clean thing I have. And someone took her. So I will use every resource at my disposal, legal and otherwise, to get her back. You can help me or you can stay out of my way. Choose. I'm trying to help you, Captain Volkov said. But you need to let us do our jobs. Don't do anything that will compromise this investigation. Find her, Nikolai said. That's your job. Mine is to make sure whoever did this regrets being born. He ended the call. The jet began its descent into Moscow. Below, the city sprawled in all directions, millions of lights, millions of people, and somewhere in that vast darkness, Irina was either hiding or being held or... He couldn't finish the thought. The wheels touched down with a jolt. Nikolai was moving before the plane fully stopped, striding down the stairs to where Victor waited beside a black SUV. What do we know? Nikolai demanded. Traffic cameras confirm her route, Victor said as they both climbed into the vehicle. She was heading west on the Minsk highway. No signs of being followed until the rural section where camera coverage ends. We've sent men to canvass the area. Gas stations, rest stops, anyone who might have seen something. Who knew I was leaving Moscow? Nikolai asked. Our inner circle. Maybe 20 people total. Make a list. I want to know where each person was this afternoon. Phone records, alibis, everything. You think it's internal? I think someone knew exactly when to move. That kind of precision means intelligence. Either they've been watching for weeks, or someone told them. Victor's expression darkened. If there's a rat in the organization, we'll deal with it, Nikolai said. After we find Irina. Priorities. The SUV raced through Moscow's late evening traffic, heading toward the location where Irina's car had been found. Nikolai stared out the window, his mind simultaneously calculating next steps and drowning in the terrible images of what might be happening to her. If this was a kidnapping, they'd make contact soon. Ransom demands. Negotiations. If it was revenge, the message would come differently. More violent. More permanent. If it was something else, trafficking, mistaken identity, random violence, then finding her became exponentially harder. His phone buzzed. An encrypted message from one of his street intelligence officers. Witness at gas station 15 kilometers from abandoned car location. Saw dark van parked on shoulder around time of incident. Heading there now. A lead. Thin but something. Nikolai forwarded the message to Captain Volkov. Then to his own team. Everyone converges on that location. Find that van. The SUV accelerated, Victor driving with aggressive precision through the city streets toward the highway. Nikolai's hands were clenched into fists, his jaw tight, every muscle in his body coiled with barely contained violence. Irina had called him 7 times. She'd been scared. She'd needed to hear his voice. And he'd sent her to voicemail because Hamburg felt more important. Because his empire, his shipment, his reputation mattered more than 30 seconds of connection. Now she was missing, possibly hurt, possibly terrified, possibly already. No, he couldn't think like that. Irina was alive. She had to be, because the alternative was impossible, unacceptable, a reality Nikolai refused to acknowledge until forced to buy evidence he couldn't deny. Drive faster, he said quietly. Victor pressed the accelerator harder. The SUV's engine roared, weaving between cars, running red lights, racing toward the place where Irina's car sat abandoned on the side of a dark highway, racing toward answers, racing toward the consequences of a call not answered, racing toward the terrible truth that sometimes missing one phone call changes everything, and not all of those changes can be undone. The scene was preserved behind police tape, portable floodlights illuminating Irina's car like a stage set for tragedy. The vehicle sat at an angle on the shoulder of the highway, driver's door open, interior dome light casting weak yellow glow across empty seats. Nikolai approached slowly, Victor trailing behind him, both men silent as they took in the evidence of violence. The driver's side window was shattered, safety glass scattered across the asphalt like diamonds. Skid marks streaked the road, indicating sudden braking. The steering wheel bore scratches, as if someone had clawed at it desperately. And on the ground beside the open door, barely visible in the harsh artificial light, was a small amount of blood. Not much, just a few drops, but enough. Captain Volkov stepped forward, his expression professionally neutral. Mr. Kuznetsov, I'm sorry you're seeing this. What happened here? Nikolai's voice was flat, emotionless, the only way he could maintain control. Based on the evidence, we believe another vehicle forced her to stop, possibly by sideswiping her car or blocking the road. The broken window suggests forced entry. The blood indicates she was injured during the struggle, though not severely based on the amount. Where's her phone? Nikolai asked. Captain Volkov gestured to an evidence bag held by a forensic technician. Inside, Irina's phone. The screen cracked but still faintly glowing with missed call notifications. All from Nikolai. 13 missed calls he'd made during the flight back from Berlin, all landing after she'd already been taken. All useless. All too late. We've accessed her call log, Captain Volkov continued. The last outgoing call was to your number at 1452. She tried to reach you 7 times between 1415 and 1452. After that, no activity until the phone was left in the car. Nikolai stared at the evidence bag, at the phone that had tried so desperately to reach him. 7 calls. 7 chances to answer. 7 opportunities to hear what she was scared of, to tell her to turn around, to send protection, to do anything other than ignore her because Hamburg felt more urgent. There's something else, Captain Volkov said quietly. We found a note, left on the dashboard. He held up another evidence bag. Inside was a simple piece of white paper with typed text. You should have answered. The words hit Nikolai like a physical blow. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. Someone had been watching, waiting, knowing that when Irina called, Nikolai wouldn't answer, counting on his priorities being elsewhere, counting on his empire mattering more than her fear. This is personal, Victor said, his voice tight with controlled rage. Someone sending a message. What kind of message? Captain Volkov asked. Nikolai didn't answer. He was staring at the note, reading it over and over, understanding exactly what it meant. Someone knew him, knew his patterns, knew he'd choose business over personal, knew that Irina would call when she was scared, and he'd send her to voicemail. This wasn't just about taking her. This was about making him feel the weight of that choice, about making him live with the consequences of prioritizing his empire over the woman he loved, about teaching him a lesson written in violence and regret. I need to see everything you've collected, Nikolai said, his voice cold and precise. Traffic camera footage, witness statements, the phone's complete history, everything. Mr. Kuznetsov, this is an active investigation. Captain. Nikolai turned to face him directly. I appreciate that you're trying to do your job, but we both know how this works. You have procedures, protocols, bureaucracy. I don't. And whoever took Irina is counting on your procedures slowing everything down. They're counting on rules protecting them. So I'm going to ask one more time. Show me everything you have, or I'll get it myself through channels that won't include you. Captain Volkov studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Come with me. They walked to a mobile command post, a large van equipped with computers and communication equipment. Inside, 2 technicians worked through digital files, mapping Irina's movements, analyzing evidence. Show him, Captain Volkov instructed. One technician pulled up traffic camera footage, showing Irina's car traveling west on the highway. The timestamp read 1518. The car appeared normal, maintaining steady speed, no signs of distress. Then, at 1523, the footage jumped to the next camera several kilometers down the road. No sign of Irina's car. There's a gap in coverage here, the technician explained, pointing to a map. About 8 kilometers of rural highway with no cameras. That's where we believe the incident occurred. Play her phone's call log, Nikolai said. The second technician brought up a detailed timeline.
7 calls. All unanswered. Each one a lifeline he'd ignored. She was persistent, Captain Volkov observed. Whatever was scaring her, she really needed to reach you. I know, Nikolai said, his voice hollow. The question is, what changed between 1415 when she first called and 1523 when she disappeared? What made her decide to leave the city? What was she running from? Nikolai closed his eyes, thinking. Irina's messages had said she was scared, that something was wrong. But she hadn't specified what. Which meant either she didn't know exactly, just sensed danger, or she'd tried to explain in the calls he didn't answer. The calls that would have told him everything. The calls that might have prevented this entire nightmare. Can you recover voicemails? Nikolai asked suddenly. The technician nodded. If she left any, yes. But there are no voicemails on your number from today. Which meant she'd hung up each time before the voicemail picked up. Hoping he'd answer before then. Hoping he'd hear the ring and pick up. But he never did. Wait, the technician said, leaning closer to the screen. There's one outgoing call that's not to your number. Everyone focused on the screen. 1441, outgoing call to unknown number, 17 seconds connected. Who did she call? Victor asked. The number isn't in her contacts, the technician said, typing rapidly. Running it now. Seconds passed. The screen populated with results. It's a burner phone, the technician reported. Activated 2 days ago. No registered owner. Used only once, to receive this call from Ms. Sokolova. Nikolai's blood ran cold. Someone contacted her. Gave her a number. Told her to call if something happened. Or threatened her, Victor added darkly. Told her to call when you were out of the country. Can you trace the phone's location? Captain Volkov asked. Already doing it. The phone was active for 17 seconds during the call, then powered off immediately after. Last known location was. The technician pulled up a map. Central Moscow. Near Pushkin Square. That's a busy area, Victor said. Thousands of people. Impossible to narrow down without more data. Play the surrounding time frame, Nikolai ordered. Show me everything that happened on her phone before and after that call. The technician compiled a timeline. Text message sent to Nikolai. I'm going to drive to Veras. Maybe being with someone will help. I love you. Please call me. She called the unknown number right after I didn't answer, Nikolai said, his voice tight. 2 minutes later she decided to leave the city. Whatever that person said scared her enough to run, Victor concluded. Or warned her about something, Captain Volkov added. Someone who knew danger was coming. Nikolai's mind raced through possibilities. Someone had contacted Irina. Someone who knew Nikolai would be unreachable. Someone who triggered her fear. But who? And why? His encrypted phone buzzed. A message from one of his street intelligence officers. Found the van. Abandoned in industrial district. Stolen plates. Being processed now. Captain, your forensics team needs to get to this location immediately, Nikolai said, forwarding the address. The vehicle used in the abduction has been located. Captain Volkov's expression sharpened. How did you? Never mind. We'll send a team. I'm going there now, Nikolai said. Mr. Kuznetsov, you cannot contaminate a crime scene. I won't touch anything, Nikolai interrupted. But I'm going. You can arrest me after we find Irina. He turned and strode out of the command post, Victor following. They climbed back into the SUV and accelerated toward the industrial district on Moscow's outskirts. Nikolai stared out the window, watching the city blur past, his mind trapped in an endless loop of terrible thoughts. Irina calling. Him ignoring. Her fear growing. Him handling Hamburg. Her being taken. Him arriving too late. Always too late. We'll find her, Victor said quietly. Will we? Nikolai's voice was raw. Or will we find what's left after whoever took her finishes making their point? Don't think like that. How should I think? Nikolai demanded. She called me 7 times, Victor. 7 times she needed me and I sent her to voicemail. Now she's gone and the last thing she heard from me was silence. Victor had no answer for that. Because there was no answer. Some mistakes couldn't be rationalized away. Some choices couldn't be justified. Some calls once missed became permanent wounds that never healed. The SUV pulled into the industrial district. Rows of abandoned warehouses, broken streetlights, the smell of rust and neglect thick in the air. In the distance, police lights flashed, illuminating a dark van parked at an angle in an empty lot. Nikolai approached slowly, his trained eyes scanning every detail. The van's side door hung open. Inside, the cargo area was empty except for a few items. Rope, discarded zip ties, a woman's shoe. Irina's shoe. The one she'd been wearing that morning when she'd made him breakfast. Nikolai's hands clenched into fists so tight his nails drew blood. She was here, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. They brought her here. But she's not here now, Victor observed. Which means they transferred her to another vehicle. Could be anywhere by now. A forensics team arrived, immediately cordoning off the area and beginning their methodical examination. Nikolai watched them work, feeling utterly powerless, a sensation he hadn't experienced since he was a child in St. Petersburg's slums, watching his father beaten by loan sharks. He'd built his entire empire to never feel powerless again. But here he was, the most dangerous man in Moscow. And he couldn't protect the one person who mattered. Captain Volkov approached, his expression grave. Mr. Kuznetsov, I need you to prepare yourself for difficult possibilities. Whoever did this has resources, planning, and clear intent. This is sophisticated. Professional. I know, Nikolai said. Which means it's someone from my world. Someone who understands how we operate. Do you have any idea who might? I have a list of 24 organizations and 36 individuals who'd want to hurt me, Nikolai interrupted. The question is which one is bold enough and stupid enough to go after Irina. His encrypted phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Nikolai answered immediately. Yes. Nikolai Kuznetsov. The voice was male, electronically distorted, unrecognizable. You should have answered when she called. Every muscle in Nikolai's body went rigid. Where is she? Scared. Alone. Wondering why the man who promised to protect her sent her to voicemail 7 times. If you hurt her. You'll what? The distorted voice sounded amused. Hunt me down. Kill me. You can't even find me, Nikolai. And you won't. Not in time. What do you want? I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything. I want you to feel the same helplessness I felt when you destroyed my life. I want you to know that your empire, your power, your reputation, none of it matters when the person you love is suffering. Nikolai's mind raced, trying to place the voice, identify the reference. Who had he destroyed? The list was long. Tell me who you are, Nikolai demanded. You don't even remember, do you? That's the beautiful part. I'm just another casualty of your rise to power. Another life you ruined without a second thought. But I remember you, Nikolai. I remember everything you took from me.
Boss, Victor started. Stand down. Nikolai gently set Irina on her feet, positioning himself between her and Alexei. You have her, Alexei said. You got what you wanted, but you don't get to leave without understanding what you took from me. I understand, Nikolai said. Your brother, your family. I took everything. And I'm sorry. That word means nothing, I know. But I am. Sorry? Alexei laughed bitterly. You think sorry fixes this? No. Nothing fixes it. But killing me won't either. It won't bring your brother back. It won't restore your family. It'll just add more bodies to the count. Maybe that's enough, Alexei said, raising his weapon. Maybe, Nikolai agreed. But before you pull that trigger, know this, I finally understand. You wanted me to feel helpless, to know what it's like to lose everything. And I do. For 3 days I felt it. The fear, the desperation, the knowledge that all my power meant nothing. You won. Your revenge worked. I'll carry this weight forever. Alexei's hand wavered slightly. So pull the trigger if you want, Nikolai continued. End it. But you'll be killing a man who already learned your lesson. A man who finally understands that the calls we don't answer are the ones that destroy us. Silence stretched between them, heavy and terrible. Then, slowly, Alexei lowered the weapon. Get out of here, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Take her and go. And Nikolai, never forget this feeling. Never forget what it cost you to learn this lesson. I won't, Nikolai promised. He turned, gathering Irina close, and walked toward the vehicles. Behind him, Alexei Morozov stood in the clearing, surrounded by the ghosts of his family, the weight of revenge that hadn't brought peace. And Nikolai walked away, carrying the woman he loved and the burden of a lesson learned too late. The hospital kept Irina for 2 days, treatment for dehydration, minor injuries, psychological evaluation. Nikolai never left her side. He sat in the chair beside her bed, holding her hand, watching her sleep, trying to comprehend how close he'd come to losing her forever. When she finally woke on the 2nd day, truly woke with clarity in her eyes, she looked at him for a long moment. You came for me, she said softly. Of course I came for you, Nikolai replied. Irina, Don't, she interrupted. Don't apologize again. I heard you say it 100 times. I know you're sorry. I should have answered, he said anyway. You called 7 times and You were handling business, she finished. You were being who you are, who you've always been. That's not an excuse. No, she agreed. It's not. Kolya, when I was in that room, tied to that chair, all I could think about was those calls. How desperately I'd needed to hear your voice. How scared I was. And how you'd chosen Hamburg over me. The words cut deeper than any blade. But then you came, Irina continued. You mobilized your entire organization. You worked for 3 days without sleep. You hunted through every corner of Moscow. You faced the man who took me and chose not to escalate the violence. You chose me. Maybe not when I called. But when it mattered most, you chose me. It shouldn't have taken you being kidnapped for me to make that choice, Nikolai said. No, she agreed. It shouldn't have. But it did. And now we both have to decide what happens next. I'll change, Nikolai promised. I'll step back from the business. Let Victor handle more. I'll be there when you call. I'll prioritize. Kolya, stop. She squeezed his hand. I don't want promises you can't keep. You are who you are. This empire, this life, it's part of you. I knew that when I fell in love with you. Then what do you want? I want you to remember this feeling, she said. I want you to remember what it felt like to think you'd lost me. And the next time I call, the next time anyone you love reaches out, I want you to ask yourself, is this more important than answering? Nikolai brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. I will, he promised. Every day for the rest of my life, I will remember. 6 months later, Nikolai sat in his office, reviewing reports from his organization. Business was stable. Territories secure. The Hamburg crisis had been resolved successfully. His phone rang. Irina's name appeared on the screen. He answered immediately. Hi, he said. Hi, she replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. Just calling to say I love you. I love you too, Solnishko. Are you okay? Do you need anything? No, I'm fine. I just wanted to hear your voice. You can call me anytime, Nikolai said. For any reason. Even if it's just to hear my voice. I'll always answer. I know, she said softly. That's why I'm not scared anymore. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. Her day, his meetings, plans for dinner, the small ordinary moments that build a life. When the call ended, Nikolai sat quietly, staring at his phone. 7 unanswered calls had nearly cost him everything. 1 answered call had given him a second chance. He would never forget the difference. Behind him, Victor entered the office. Boss, we have a situation developing in. Can it wait? Nikolai interrupted. Victor paused, surprised. It's not urgent. Few hours, maybe. Then it can wait, Nikolai said, standing. I'm going home for dinner. Victor smiled slightly. Understood, boss. Nikolai walked out of his office, down the stairs, into the Moscow evening where Irina waited for him. Because he'd finally learned. Some calls can't be missed. Some moments can't be postponed. Some people are more important than any empire. And the weight of that lesson, learned in blood and fear and desperate searching, would stay with him forever. A reminder that the most powerful person in the world is still powerless against the consequences of the calls they don't answer. This is where I ask you something important. Not as a content creator, but as someone who believes these stories matter. Subscribe if you understand that life doesn't give us second chances for every missed call. Subscribe if you've ever felt the weight of choosing wrong and learned to choose better. Your subscription isn't just engagement. It's a commitment to yourself that you'll remember what really matters. Thank you for being here. Thank you for feeling this story. Until next time. And fresh footprints in the dust. Leading deeper into the building. Nikolai followed them silently, his training taking over, every sense heightened. The footprints led to a stairwell, down into the basement levels. He descended carefully, weapon up, Victor covering his back. At the bottom, a hallway extended into darkness. At the far end, a sliver of light beneath a door. Nikolai approached, his heart hammering. He reached the door, listened. Silence. He tested the handle. Unlocked. He pushed it open. The room beyond was small, concrete, lit by a single bare bulb. In the center, a metal chair, empty, but with fresh rope on the ground beside it. And on the wall, written in what looked like blood, a message. Too late. Nikolai's world tilted. Too late. She'd been here. But now she was gone. Moved again. Always one step ahead. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, his hand shaking. Did you find my little gift? The distorted voice asked. She was there 3 hours ago. Crying for you. Calling your name. But you were busy searching the wrong sector. Weren't you? Where is she now? Nikolai's voice was barely human. Somewhere you'll never think to look. Somewhere she'll stay until you finally understand that all your power, all your resources, all your reputation, it means nothing. You failed her. And you'll keep failing her. Because you can't protect what you don't prioritize. Stop this, Nikolai said. Please, just stop. You've made your point. I understand. I failed her. I chose wrong. I admit it. Now let her go. Oh, I will let her go, the voice said. Eventually, when I decide you've suffered enough. When I'm satisfied you've felt a fraction of what you made me feel. Tell me who you are, Nikolai demanded. Give me that much. Let me know whose revenge this is. A long pause. Then, Alexei Morozov. Does the name mean anything to you? Nikolai's blood turned to ice. Morozov. 5 years ago. A territorial dispute over shipping routes through St. Petersburg. The Morozov family had controlled the port for a generation. Nikolai had wanted it. The conflict had escalated. Violently, Nikolai had ordered a strike on their warehouse. His intelligence had said it was empty. It wasn't. Alexei Morozov's younger brother had been inside, conducting inventory. The fire had killed him. Nikolai had sent compensation to the family, had offered territory as restitution. But Alexei had disappeared, dropped off the grid. Nikolai had assumed he'd fled the country or died in obscurity. He hadn't. He'd been planning, waiting, watching, learning Nikolai's patterns, identifying his one weakness. Irina. I remember, Nikolai said quietly. Your brother. The warehouse fire. Alexei, I'm sorry. I know that means nothing, but I am. It was supposed to be empty. I never intended. You never intended? Alexei's voice, even distorted, vibrated with rage. You destroyed my family's legacy. You killed my brother. You didn't even have the decency to do it personally. You sent men, like my brother's life was worth so little it didn't deserve your direct attention. Just like Irina's calls didn't deserve your attention. You're right, Nikolai said. You're absolutely right. I didn't value what mattered. I prioritized power over people. I made terrible choices. But Irina didn't make those choices. She's paying for my sins. Let her go, and I'll answer for them myself. No, Alexei said. You don't get the easy way out. You don't get to die and be remembered as some tragic figure who sacrificed himself for love. You get to live with this. You get to know that when she needed you most, you weren't there. You get to carry that weight for the rest of your life. Where is she? Nikolai asked. Just tell me she's alive. For now, Alexei said. But that could change. Depends on how much longer I want you to suffer. The call ended. Nikolai stood in the empty room, surrounded by the evidence of Irina's captivity, the rope that had bound her, the blood-written message mocking his failure. Victor entered quietly. Boss, we have people searching for any properties associated with Alexei Morozov. If he's back in Moscow, he has to be somewhere. He's had 5 years to prepare this, Nikolai said, his voice hollow. He'll have covered his tracks. Multiple safe houses. False identities. He knows how we operate. Then what do we do? Nikolai looked at his second-in-command. His oldest friend. The man who'd stood beside him through every battle. We do what we should have done from the beginning, Nikolai said. We stop looking where we think she is, and start thinking like someone who wants us to fail. Alexei isn't hiding her somewhere obvious. He's hiding her somewhere personal. Somewhere connected to his brother. Somewhere that means something to his revenge. The old Morozov properties? Victor suggested. All sold or seized, Nikolai said. But there might be one place. The family dacha. Outside the city. His brother used to take him there as kids. It was in his mother's name, not the family business. Might have slipped through the asset seizures. That's thin, Victor warned. It's all we have. The Morozov family dacha sat in a forest clearing 40 kilometers from Moscow, a modest wooden structure slowly being reclaimed by nature. The windows were dark, the surrounding woods silent. Nikolai approached on foot, having left the vehicles a kilometer back to avoid alerting anyone inside. Victor and 6 others spread out in a tactical formation, surrounding the property. The front door was locked but aged. Victor forced it silently. They entered. The interior was dust and memories. Furniture covered in sheets, photographs on walls showing a family that no longer existed, children who'd grown into violence and tragedy. Nikolai moved through the rooms methodically, weapon ready, every sense alert. Upstairs, a hallway. 3 doors. The first 2 revealed empty bedrooms. The third was locked. Nikolai didn't hesitate. He kicked it open. The room beyond was small, dark. And in the corner, bound to a chair, her face bruised, her eyes wide with fear and hope, Irina. For a moment, Nikolai couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at her, confirming she was real, alive, here. Then he was across the room, cutting the ropes, pulling her into his arms. I'm here, he whispered, his voice breaking. Solnishko, I'm here. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't answer. I'm sorry Kolya, she sobbed against his chest. I was so scared. I called you so many times, and you didn't. I know. I failed you, but you're safe now. Promise. You're safe. Victor appeared in the doorway. Boss, we need to move. This could be a trap. Nikolai lifted Irina gently, cradling her as if she might break. She clung to him, her fingers digging into his jacket. They moved quickly down the stairs, out of the dacha, toward the vehicles. But as they reached the clearing, a figure stepped from the tree line. Alexei Morozov, older than the photos Nikolai had seen, hardened by 5 years of grief and planning, and armed. Did you really think I'd make it that easy? Alexei called out. That I'd just let you walk away with her? Nikolai's men immediately raised their weapons, but Nikolai held up a hand. Stand down, he ordered.